Darius Kane was a man who had seen too much of the universe. A deep space salvage pilot, he made his living venturing into the wreckage of lost ships, abandoned stations, and forgotten corners of the void where few dared to go. It was a lonely job, one filled with ghosts of the past, but it paid well. This job, however, felt different. The derelict freighter he boarded had been drifting for years, swallowed by the abyss of deep space. The Valkyrie 7 was a long-lost cargo hauler. Its crew mysteriously vanished. Official records claimed it was a routine malfunction. Darius knew better. Ships didn't just disappear. The moment he stepped aboard, his gut twisted. Everything was too quiet. No signs of life, no bodies, just rows of empty corridors stretching into darkness. His boots echoed against the cold metal as he pressed forward, his flashlight sweeping across rusted walls and flickering control panels. "Come on," he muttered under his breath. "Where's the good stuff?" His scanner pinged, an energy reading. Faint, but stable. Darius narrowed his eyes. That was impossible. The ship had been dead for over a decade. There shouldn't be anything still functioning. He followed the signal down a long corridor, past shattered bulkheads and broken doors. It led him to a sealed cargo hold. Strange. The door controls were active, the panel glowing with faint amber light. Darius hesitated. He had a bad feeling about this, but salvagers didn't make money by being careful. He pressed the override. With a loud hiss, the door slid open. The room beyond was wrong. Darius had expected crates, maybe a few scattered. Supplies. Instead, the cargo bay stretched farther than it should have, its walls pulsing with dim, shifting light, like a living thing. It felt less like a storage hold, and more like a void, a rift in reality, and at its center, a girl. She was sitting on the cold metal floor, curled in on herself, not human. Not entirely. Her skin was pale with an ethereal glow, as if stardust ran through her veins. Her silver-white hair floated gently, defying gravity, shimmering like mist in the moonlight. And her eyes, violet and endless, like galaxies in constant motion, stared directly at him. Darius's breath caught in his throat. She wasn't wearing much, only a thin, translucent veil of fabric that barely clung to her slender form. She looked fragile, lost, alone. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then her lips parted slightly, but no words came. Instead, her voice resonated in his mind, soft as a whisper, yet vast as the cosmos. "You found me." Darius staggered back, his hand instinctively reaching for the pistol strapped to his belt. What the hell? The girl tilted her head, studying him with innocent curiosity. Darius tightened his grip on his weapon. His heart was pounding. His instinct screamed at him to run, but something held him there. She wasn't a threat. If anything, she looked afraid. Still, he kept his distance. "Who are you?" His voice came out rough, uncertain. "How did you get here?" The girl blinked slowly, as if the question didn't make sense. Her fingers curled into her arms, hugging herself tighter. "I don't know." Darius frowned. "You have to be from somewhere." A flicker of pain crossed her expression, like a memory trying to surface and slipping away just as quickly. "I don't remember." His gut twisted. Her voice, soft, distant, haunted, wasn't just confusion. It was emptiness. She truly had nothing. No name, no past, no home. Darius exhaled sharply. He had 1,000 questions, but none of them mattered yet. This girl, whoever or whatever she was in trouble, and she was alone. Darius had spent most of his life watching people walk away, leaving others to fend for themselves in the cold vastness of space. He wasn't about to do the same. Stepping forward, he crouched beside her. "All right," he said, his voice softer this time. "Let's figure this out together." Her glowing violet eyes met his, and for the first time since boarding the Valkyrie 7, Darius felt something unexpected. Not fear, not confusion, but fate. Something had brought him here, and he wasn't leaving without her. Darius had been in plenty of strange situations before, but none quite like this. The girl sat motionless on the cold floor of the abandoned cargo bay, staring up at him with those glowing violet eyes. Her entire presence felt otherworldly, as if she wasn't just from another planet but another reality entirely. His mind raced. She claimed she didn't know where she was from, but that wasn't possible. Everyone had a home, a past, something, except maybe she didn't. Darius swallowed hard and crouched in front of her. "What do you mean, you don't remember?" Her silver-white hair shimmered as she shook her head slowly. I only know that I woke here, alone." His brow furrowed. "How long have you been here?" The girl hesitated, lowering her gaze as if ashamed. "I do not know." Darius glanced around the room again. It felt wrong, like the laws of physics themselves had been stretched just to contain her. There were no doors leading in or out. No sign of how she could have gotten here. It was as if she had simply appeared in this empty space. A shiver ran down his spine. Something wasn't right. Darius sat back on his heels, watching her closely. "You're not human, are you?" She looked up, startled. For a moment, she seemed unsure how to answer. Then slowly, she shook her head. "No." His grip on his sidearm tightened slightly. "Are you dangerous?" The girl's eyes widened. "No," she whispered, almost desperate. I don't think so." Darius wasn't sure whether that made him feel better or worse. He exhaled sharply, rubbing the back of his neck. "All right. You've got no memory, no past, no idea where you are. But that still doesn't explain what the hell you're doing in a ship that's been lost for 10 years. She hesitated, as if the words didn't quite reach her. Then, her violet eyes clouded over. "I don't think I belong here," she admitted. Something in her voice sent a chill through him. Darius leaned forward. "Where do you belong?" She was quiet for a long time, and then, in the smallest, most fragile whisper, she said, "I think they took it away." Darius's stomach dropped. "Who?" The girl's fingers curled into the fabric of her veil-like garment, gripping it tight. "The ones who destroyed my world." His breath hitched. "You remember that?" She nodded, her hands trembling. I see glimpses, flashes of fire, screams, a sky that turned to ash." Her breath hitched as fear flickered across her face. "I think I was the only one who survived." Darius swore under his breath. He had heard stories like this before, entire civilizations wiped out by war, by hunger, by the cruelty of the universe. But this? A girl who just appeared inside an abandoned freighter with no history, no trace of how she got there. Something about it didn't add up. His gaze softened. "If that's true, then you're the last of your kind." The girl blinked at him. Slowly, her lips parted. "Then, I truly have nothing." Darius clenched his jaw. There was something in her voice, something that dug under his skin and settled deep in his chest. A wound. He knew that pain. He had lived it, carried it like an invisible weight. The feeling of losing everything. The ache of being left behind. And for the first time in a long time, Darius felt something stir inside him. A choice. He could leave her. Walk away. Pretend this never happened. There was no profit in saving a lost alien girl with no past and no future. But something told him if he did that, he'd never forgive himself. Darius sighed, raking a hand through his messy dark hair. "Okay," he said, standing up and offering her his hand. Come with me." She hesitated, staring at his outstretched palm, as if it were something foreign. Then, after a long pause, she reached forward. The moment her fingers touched his mind exploded. Violent storm of images flooded his senses, flashes of a city of crystal and gold, burning under a blackened sky. Towering structures collapsing into fire and ruin, figures in sleek, faceless armor marching through the streets, wiping out everything in their path, and in the chaos, her alone, afraid, running through the ruins as the world around her crumbled, and then darkness. Darius gasped and yanked his hand away, staggering back. His chest ached as if he had just lived through a lifetime of suffering in an instant. The girl, her expression was unreadable. He sucked in a sharp breath. What the hell was that? She swallowed hard. A glimpse. His pulse pounded in his ears. A glimpse of what? She looked down. Then, in a voice so quiet he almost didn't hear it, she whispered, "The end." A cold chill crawled down Darius's spine. This girl, this being, wasn't just some lost survivor. She was the last remnant of something ancient, something powerful, and something in the universe had tried to erase her completely. Darius exhaled, forcing himself to stay calm. His instinct screamed at him to run, but another, deeper part of him knew he couldn't. He had seen too much, and now, whoever had destroyed her world would be coming for her. Darius Klee. Darius sat in the cockpit of his ship, Drake's Fortune, watching the girl as she observed the stars through the viewport. Her silver-white hair shimmered in the dim cockpit light, and her violet eyes reflected the swirling galaxies beyond. She had said her name was Sahari, the only thing she seemed to remember about herself. Darius had no idea what to do with her. He was a salvager, not a hero, and yet something deep inside told him that leaving her behind hadn't been an option. "Never had a stowaway before," he muttered, breaking the silence. Sahari turned to him, tilting her head. "Am I unwelcome?" Darius sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Didn't say that. Just trying to figure out how I explain this to customs if they scan my ship." She frowned slightly, her delicate brows furrowing. "Customs? You know, laws, space stations? People who don't like when strange aliens suddenly appear out of nowhere." Her expression remained unreadable, but something in her eyes seemed sad. "I do not belong to any of those things." Darius exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, I got that." The silence stretched between them. He wasn't good at this, talking. He was used to solitude, to ships with no crew, to days spent drifting in the black without anyone asking him questions. And yet, here she was, a girl who had nothing, no past, no home, no name, except for the one that clung to her mind like a half-forgotten dream. Darius studied her carefully. She didn't move like a normal person. Every motion was fluid, effortless, like she was barely bound by gravity at all. And those eyes, they weren't human. They weren't just alien either. They were ancient, like the universe itself had been staring at her for a very, very long time. He sighed again, rubbing his temples. "All right, look. I'm heading toward Eos Station in a few days. I know some people there. We can figure out what to do with you." Sahari blinked at him. "You wish to leave me there?" Darius hesitated. "It's better than keeping you. In deep space with a guy who barely knows how to take care of himself, let alone a lost girl from a dead civilization." She was quiet. Then, softly, she said, "Wherever you go, I wish to go too." Darius's chest tightened. "Why?" She looked at him then, her violet eyes locking onto his. "Because you are the only one who has not left me behind." Darius swallowed. Damn it. He wasn't good at this. He wasn't the guy who saved people. He was the guy who ran, who took what he needed from broken ships and forgotten places, then moved on before anyone could need him. But Sahari, she wasn't just asking for shelter. She was asking for something more: connection, belonging. Darius sighed. You sure about that, Star Girl? She gave him the smallest nod. Something inside him cracked, and before he could stop himself, he found himself saying, All right then, looks like you're part of the crew. She smiled, a small, fragile thing, like the first flicker of a star being born. And for the first time in years, Darius Kane felt something he hadn't in a long, long time, a heartbeat in the void. Darius had spent years navigating the dark alleys of deep space, skirting the edges of legality and avoiding unnecessary trouble. But somehow, trouble always found him, and this time it had violet eyes and a name whispered like a secret: Sahari. For 2 days they drifted through the void, heading toward Eos Station, a neutral trading hub, where he hoped to get some answers. Sahari stayed close, watching him work, asking quiet questions about the ship, the stars, the worlds he had seen. She was curious, but cautious, like a wild creature that had never known safety. Darius wasn't sure why, but he found himself protective of her. Maybe it was the way she looked at him, like he was the only thing tethering her to existence. Maybe it was the fact that she had no one else, or maybe it was something deeper. But whatever this strange connection between them was, it didn't matter, because on the third day, everything changed. The warning. The ship's AI, Vera, suddenly blared to life. Warning! Unidentified vessel detected. Closing fast. Darius snapped his head up from the control panel. What? A red holographic display flickered in front of him. An unknown ship approaching at high speed. No transponder ID, no call signs. Pirates? No, this wasn't a random attack. They had been hunting him, or rather, hunting her. Darius's jaw clenched. Damn it. He flicked a switch, activating the ship's thrusters. Vera, evasive protocols. Get us moving. Complying. The ship lurched forward, braking into a hard turn. The Drake's Fortune wasn't a warship, but it was fast. He had modified it himself, stripping out everything unnecessary for pure speed. But the pursuers were gaining. Sahari appeared behind him, her silver hair shimmering in the low light. They found me. Darius shot her a look. You knew someone was after you? She flinched, looking away. I did not remember until now. His grip tightened on the controls. Great timing. A blast of energy fire shot past the ship, shaking the hull. They weren't here to talk. Darius cursed. Vera, status? Shields at 82%. Weapons systems inactive. That was the problem. Drake's Fortune wasn't meant for combat. His ship had minimal defenses, just enough to deter scavengers, but not enough to take on whoever the hell these guys were. Sahari closed her eyes, pressing her fingers to her temples. Darius glanced at her. What are you doing? Her lips parted. I think I can help. Another blast rocked the ship. The enemy vessel was almost on them now, a dark, predatory shape cutting through the void. Darius gritted his teeth. Whatever you're gonna do it fast. Sahari inhaled sharply, and then the universe warped. A power awakens. Darius felt it before he saw it, a ripple in reality. A shift in the fabric of space itself. His ship's controls glitched, screens flickering with static. The enemy vessel, which had been right on their tail, suddenly lurched, their weapon systems misfiring, their navigation going haywire. Darius barely managed to keep Drake's Fortune steady. What the hell is this? He shouted. Sahari's eyes snapped open, glowing with a light that wasn't human. I am bending them. Darius's blood ran cold. You're what? They rely on machines. Her voice was distant, layered with something ancient. I am shifting them. Darius watched in stunned silence as the enemy ship twisted, its systems shutting down, its weapons failing. It was like the laws of reality were bending around Sahari's will. She was not normal. She was something else. Darius didn't know whether to be terrified or impressed. But one thing was certain. She wasn't just some lost girl. She was dangerous. And whoever was hunting her knew exactly what she was capable of. Escape Darius shook himself out of his shock. No time for questions. He slammed the ship's thrusters to full power, breaking away from the enemy's disrupted pursuit. Vera, plot a jump route, now. Calculating. The enemy ship was still floundering, struggling to regain control. Whatever Sahari had done, it had given them a chance. Darius wasn't about to waste it. A new set of coordinates flashed on his screen. Got it, he muttered. Sahari, hold on. She barely had time to react before Drake's fortune surged forward, space tearing around them as the jump engines activated, stars blurred. The void stretched, and in an instant, they were gone. Aftermath, when they finally dropped out of hyperspace, everything was quiet. Darius exhaled, his hands still gripping the controls. His heart was pounding. They had barely made it. Sahari stood beside him, her expression unreadable. Darius turned to her, searching her glowing violet eyes. What the hell did you just do? She hesitated. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, I remembered. A chill crawled down Darius's spine. Remembered what? She closed her eyes. What I am. Silence. Darius's mind raced. Sahari wasn't just an alien girl. She was something more. And the people hunting her, they weren't trying to find her. They were trying to erase her. Darius exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. What the hell had he gotten himself into? He looked at Sahari again. She was staring out at the stars, her expression unreadable. Darius sighed. No turning back now. All right, he muttered. Looks like I just pissed off someone real bad. Sahari turned to him. Are you angry? Darius scoffed. Nah, I've been running from people my whole life. Might as well add some cosmic warlords to the list. She blinked at him. Then, to his surprise, she smiled. It was small, almost invisible, but it was there, and for some damn reason it made Darius's chest feel warm. He shook his head. Focus. They weren't safe yet. But one thing was clear. Whoever was after Sahari wasn't going to stop, and now they were after him too. Darius leaned back in his chair, staring at the endless void ahead. Well, girl, he murmured. Looks like we're in this together. Sahari didn't say anything. But when she reached out, just barely, just enough for her fingers to brush against his, Darius didn't pull away, for better or worse. He was in this now, and somehow that felt right. Darius had spent his life dodging death in the void, but never like this. For the past hour, the Drake's fortune had been weaving through the shattered remains of a dead star system, a graveyard of asteroid debris and forgotten wrecks. And behind them, the Hunters, two sleek black warships, armed with enough firepower to turn him to space dust. Darius gritted his teeth, yanking the controls to the side as another plasma blast tore past their hull, rocking the ship violently. Vera, I need options. Now. The AI's voice remained maddeningly calm. Current trajectory leads to a nebula-class distortion field. High risk of navigation failure. Darius smirked. Sounds perfect. A warning siren blared as another shot barely missed them. Punch it, he roared. The ship lurched forward, engines screaming as they dove straight into the swirling chaos of the nebula. The moment they entered, the view outside became a haze of shifting light and turbulence. Darius exhaled sharply, his hands gripping the controls. That should buy us some... A sudden gasp from Sahari cut him off. He turned to find her shaking, her violet eyes flickering with panic. Sahari? She clutched the edges of her seat, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. They're inside. Darius's stomach dropped. What? Sahari's voice trembled. Not just chasing, they are here. And then the ship went dark. The shadows come a deep, unnatural hum filled the cockpit, the kind that didn't belong. Darius felt it in his bones, a crawling sensation like unseen fingers tracing down his spine. He knew this feeling. Boarding, his instincts kicked in. He reached for his blaster, already pulling up ship security feeds. On the flickering console, they were on the ship. Sahari clutched her chest, her breathing uneven. They are wrong. Darius cursed under his breath. Tell me something I don't know. The security feed glitched, showing brief flashes of movement in the cargo bay. Figures, dark, cloaked in shadow, moving in unnatural, jerking motions, not human. Darius clenched his jaw. Stay behind me. Sahari shook her head. No. Darius blinked. What? She lifted her gaze, her violet eyes glowing with an energy he hadn't seen before. I will not hide. Not again. Something shifted in the air around her. Darius's grip on his blaster tightened. Sahari! And then, before he could say another word, the door to the cockpit slid open. The fight. The first thing Darius saw was darkness, not empty space, something worse. A living shadow, humanoid in shape, but shifting, writhing like smoke trapped in a body that didn't fit. It had no face, only two hollow slits of burning white light where eyes should be. And it spoke, not with a mouth, but inside his head. Like Sahari. The remnant must be erased. Darius fired first. The shot passed through the creature's body like mist. The thing barely flinched until Sahari raised her hand. The moment she did, reality itself seemed to bend. The creature froze, its form glitching, flickering like a corrupted image. Sahari's voice was not her own when she spoke. You cannot have me. The shadows screamed, a horrible, mind-breaking sound that made Darius's vision blur. Then, light exploded from Sahari's hands. A shockwave of pure, shimmering energy blasted through the ship, sending the creatures reeling. The shadows melted, dissipating into the void as if they had never existed. And then, silence. Darius lowered his blaster, his heart pounding. What the hell was that? Sahari stood there, chest rising and falling, her hands still glowing. She looked at him, her voice shaking. I remember more, Darius exhaled. Tell me. She swallowed hard. I am the last. They created me. He frowned. Who? She hesitated. Then, the architects. Darius had never heard that name before, but somehow he knew it mattered. He took a slow step toward her. And those things? Her expression darkened. They are the ones who unmade us. Darius felt a chill crawl up his spine. Whoever these architects were, someone, something, had wiped them out. And Sahari? She wasn't just their survivor. She was their last weapon. The realization hit him like a meteor. This wasn't just about her. This was about everything. And now, he was in the middle of it. Darius let out a slow, steady breath. All right. Sahari blinked. All right. He gave a half smirk. Guess I'm stuck with you, huh? She stared at him. Then, despite everything, she smiled. Small. Almost imperceptible. But real. Darius chuckled, shaking his head. Fine. Let's finish this. Sahari tilted her head. Finish? Darius spun his blaster. If they want to erase you, we find out why. She hesitated. Then, she nodded. For the first time, she wasn't alone. And for the first time in his life, neither was he. Darius had spent his entire life running, from the past, from people, from himself. But now he wasn't alone anymore. Sahari sat beside him in the cockpit, her violet eyes locked on the endless stretch of stars ahead. Her silver-white hair shimmered. In the dim light, the faint glow of her skin pulsing in quiet rhythm with something ancient, something not of this universe. She was different now. Not just a lost girl. Not just a survivor. She remembered. The architects, the beings who created her people, had designed them as something more than just a species. They were custodians of time and memory, meant to hold the universe's forgotten knowledge. But someone, had feared their existence, so they were erased, and Sahari was the last echo of a civilization that was never supposed to exist. Darius leaned back in his chair, exhaling. "So, what now, Stargirl?" She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "You wish to leave me behind?" Darius scoffed. "Are you kidding? After all the trouble I just went through?" Sahari blinked as if genuinely surprised. Darius gave her a half smirk. "Nah, you're stuck with me now." Her lips parted slightly, and for the first time, he saw something in her expression, relief. A soft silence settled between them, the kind that wasn't awkward, wasn't heavy, just peaceful. Until a proximity alert blared. Darius's smirk disappeared instantly. Aw, hell. The Drake's Fortune sensors flared to life, tracking multiple signatures approaching fast. Sahari's breath hitched. "They are coming." Darius cursed under his breath. Of course they are. The ones who had hunted her, the ones who wanted her erased, had finally caught up. He scanned the readings. "Vera, what am I looking at?" The AI's calm voice filled the cockpit. "Multiple warships. Energy signatures indicate high-level weaponry. No known allegiance." Darius clenched his jaw. "That's a lot of firepower for one girl." Sahari's expression darkened. "It is not me they fear." He turned to her. "Then what?" She inhaled, her violet eyes gleaming with something new. "Resolve. They fear what I will become." The ship shook violently as the enemy fleet opened fire. Darius gritted his teeth. "Hold on!" He yanked the controls, sending the Drake's Fortune into a breakneck dive toward a nearby asteroid field. Plasma bolts streaked past them, lighting up the void like a dying sun. Sahari closed her eyes. "I can stop them." Darius didn't hesitate. "Do it." Her hands lifted, fingers glowing like stardust. And then, the universe shifted. The choice. The enemy ships froze mid-flight. Their weapons shorted out, engines flickering. The very fabric of space around them warped, folding in on itself. Darius watched in stunned silence as Sahari stood, her body pulsing with energy. Her voice was not just hers anymore. It was layered with the whispers of 1,000 lost voices. "I am the last. I am the memory of a forgotten people. I will not be erased." And then, she let go. A shockwave of shimmering light burst outward. It wasn't just energy. It was history, the weight of an entire civilization pouring through space. The enemy ships didn't explode. They simply ceased to exist, like they had never been there at all. Darius sucked in a sharp breath. "Sahari, what did you just do?" She turned to him, her eyes dimming, her body swaying slightly. "I set things right." She collapsed. Darius caught her before she hit the floor, his heart hammering. "Sahari! Hey, stay with me!" Her breath was shallow, her pulse weak. Whatever she had done, it had drained her. Darius clenched his jaw. He wasn't losing her. Not now, not after everything. Carefully, he lifted her into his arms, carrying her toward the ship's medbay. She wasn't just a mystery anymore. She was his responsibility, and somewhere deep inside, Darius knew, she was something more than that too. A heartbeat in the void hours passed. Sahari finally stirred, her violet eyes fluttering open. Darius was there, sitting beside her, arms crossed. He exhaled in relief. "Took you long enough." She blinked up at him. "Did we survive?" He smirked. "Yeah, you kind of vaporized an entire fleet, so yeah, I'd say we made it." She stared at him for a long moment. "You did not leave." Darius scoffed. "Of course I didn't leave. Who else is going to make sure you don't pass out from glowing too hard?" Sahari's lips parted, and for a moment she just looked at him. Then she reached out, her fingers barely brushing his hand. Darius felt a strange warmth settle in his chest, the kind he hadn't felt in years, the kind he thought he had forgotten. Sahari's voice was barely a whisper. "Thank you, Darius." For once, he didn't have a snarky reply. He just held her hand, letting the silence stretch between them, and in the quiet hum of the ship, amidst the endless sea of stars, Darius Kane finally understood. He hadn't just saved Sahari. She had saved him, too. The end. Want more sci-fi romance? If you loved this story, let me know. Drop a comment, like, and share for more thrilling adventures.